The ivory tablecloth and crystal wine glasses caught the afternoon light streaming through my sister's dining room windows as we gathered for her 10th wedding anniversary celebration. I sat quietly at the far end of the mahogany table, still in my navy blazer and simple blouse from the office, feeling somewhat out of place among the designer dresses and expensive jewelry worn by the other guests. "So Katie," my brother-in-law Marcus announced loudly enough for the entire table to hear, "still working at the hospital?" His tone carried that familiar mixture of condescension and amusement that always accompanied his questions about my career. I looked up from my salad. "Yes, at Mercy General." Right. Medical assistant, wasn't it?" He swirled his wine dramatically. "My wife's little sister, everyone, the one who helps the real doctors do their jobs." The guests chuckled politely while my sister Sarah looked uncomfortable. She tried to explain my work to Marcus countless times, but he seemed determined to maintain his own interpretation. "Actually," I said quietly, "I'm not a medical assistant." Marcus waved dismissively. "Medical coordinator, patient liaison, whatever they're calling it these days. The point is, you work in the medical field without actually being a doctor or nurse." His business associate, a man named Gregory, leaned forward with interest. "What exactly do you do at the hospital, Katie?" Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in. "She basically organizes schedules, files paperwork, maybe helps with patient intake. Medical assistant is just a fancy way of saying secretary, but it sounds more important when you work in a hospital." The table erupted in knowing laughter. I took a sip of water and said nothing. "The thing about Katie," Marcus continued, clearly enjoying his audience, "is that she's always been content with supporting roles. Some people are leaders, some people are followers. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real responsibility." Gregory nodded understandingly. "Still, healthcare administration must be steady work. Good benefits, probably." "Exactly." Marcus pointed his fork at Gregory. "It's perfect for someone who wants to be around medicine without the stress of actually making important decisions. Let the real professionals handle the life and death stuff while Katie handles the filing." My sister Sarah tried to change the subject. "Marcus, maybe we should talk about something else." "Why?" "I'm not being mean, honey. Katie's job is perfectly respectable for what it is. Medical assistant, office manager, whatever. It's honest work. Just not the kind of career that requires, real leadership skills." His law firm partner, Diana, smiled patronizingly. "Katie, that's so nice that you found your niche. Not everyone needs to be in charge. The medical field needs support staff too." "Support staff," Marcus repeated with satisfaction. "That's exactly right, Diana. Katie found her level and she's comfortable there. No stress, no big decisions, just doing what she's told by the actual medical professionals." My phone buzzed against my purse. I glanced at the screen. Margaret Willis, board secretary. See. Marcus gestured at my phone. Even during family celebrations, they're calling her in to handle some administrative crisis. No work-life balance when you're just another employee. I silenced the phone and returned to my meal. "The difference between Katie and someone like me," Marcus continued, warming to his favorite topic, "is that I built my own law firm. I make the decisions, set the policies, control the direction of the business. Katie follows directions from doctors and administrators." Gregory nodded approvingly. "There's definitely a difference between being an entrepreneur and being an employee. Both are necessary, but one builds wealth while the other just earns a paycheck." "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "Katie's job is stable and predictable. She'll never get rich, but she'll never have to worry about the stress of running a business either." My phone rang. Same caller. I glanced at the screen and realized I needed to take it. "Excuse me," I said, standing from the table. Marcus rolled his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, witness the life of a medical assistant. No boundaries between work and personal time because you're always at someone else's beck and call." I stepped into Sarah's kitchen and answered. "Katie speaking. Ms. Morrison, I apologize for interrupting your weekend, but we have an urgent situation requiring your immediate approval. The board meeting for the St. Catherine's Hospital acquisition has been moved to tomorrow morning due to the seller's deadline." I glanced back toward the dining room where Marcus was explaining to his guests why support staff never truly understood business strategy. "What's the total acquisition cost, Margaret?" $220 million. Legal has completed due diligence and finance projects $85 million in annual revenue from the acquisition. It would give Mercy Health Systems complete control of cardiac services in the northern suburbs. And the regulatory approvals? All cleared. We just need CEO approval to proceed with the purchase tomorrow morning. I could hear Marcus's voice carrying from the dining room. The thing about administrative jobs is that you never have to make real decisions or take responsibility for outcomes. Margaret approved the acquisition. But I want a detailed integration plan within 2 weeks, and schedule a meeting with Street Catherine's medical staff to address any concerns about the transition. Of course, Ms. Morrison. Anything else? How are the patient satisfaction scores at our new facility in Brookfield? Excellent. 97% patient satisfaction, and we're seeing a 15% increase in patient volume since we took over operations. Good. Email me the quarterly report first thing Monday morning. Will do. Again, I apologize for interrupting your family time. No problem, Margaret. Have a good weekend. I ended the call and returned to the dining room, where Marcus was in the middle of an animated story about his latest business acquisition. So I told them, that's the difference between thinking like an owner and thinking like an employee. He concluded to appreciative laughter. As I sat back down, Gregory looked at me curiously. Everything okay, Katie? Work emergency. Something like that, I replied. Marcus chuckled. Let me guess. Someone called in sick and they need Katie to cover an extra shift? Or maybe a doctor needs his schedule reorganized. Actually, I said quietly, it was about a hospital acquisition. The table fell silent for a moment. Hospital acquisition? Diana repeated slowly. We're purchasing St. Catherine's Hospital for $220 million. The board meeting was moved to tomorrow morning. Marcus laughed loudly. Katie, you don't need to make up important-sounding work to impress people. We all understand that medical assistants don't handle acquisitions. I'm not a medical assistant, Marcus. Right. Medical coordinator, patient advocate, whatever. The point is, you're not exactly in the boardroom making multi-million-dollar decisions. Gregory looked confused. Katie, who was calling you about a hospital acquisition? The board secretary. She needed CEO approval to proceed with the purchase. Marcus was still chuckling. CEO approval. Katie, come on. Just be honest about what you do. There's no shame in administrative work. I am being honest about what I do. Which is what, exactly? Diana asked pointedly. I took a deep breath. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Mercy Health Systems. The dining room went completely silent. That's impossible, Marcus said flatly. Mercy Health Systems operates 8 hospitals, 24 clinics, and 3 surgical centers across the metropolitan area. We employ over 12,000 people and generate approximately $1.8 billion in annual revenue. Marcus stared at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. Gregory leaned forward intently. Mercy Health Systems? The hospital network. Yes. I know that system. My firm has done legal work for some of their suppliers. They're one of the largest healthcare networks in the region. Diana's wine glass sat forgotten in her hands. Katie, are you saying you run Mercy Health Systems? I founded the company 11 years ago and have served as CEO since inception. Marcus found his voice. That's insane. You can't run a billion-dollar healthcare company. You're 33 years old. I started with one urgent care clinic and grew organically through strategic acquisitions and operational efficiency improvements. But you said you work at Mercy General. I do work at Mercy General. It's our flagship hospital. My office is on the 15th floor of the executive wing. Sarah looked stunned. Katie, why didn't you ever tell us? Tell you what? That my work had value? That healthcare administration could be both meaningful and profitable. Marcus was shaking his head repeatedly. This is a joke. You're telling me that while I've been building my little law firm, you've been running a billion-dollar hospital system. $1.8 billion, actually. And growing. Gregory pulled out his phone. I'm looking at Mercy Health Systems' website right now. Catherine Morrison, Chief Executive Officer. He looked up at me. That's you. Yes. It says here you hold an MBA from Wharton and a Master's in Healthcare Administration from Johns Hopkins. I completed both degrees simultaneously while building the company. Marcus grabbed Gregory's phone and stared at the screen. This says you were named Healthcare Executive of the Year by Modern Healthcare magazine. Last year, yes. Diana set down her wine glass with trembling hands. Katie, how is this possible? We thought you were just support staff. I finished. Someone who handles filing and organizes schedules. The room remained silent except for the sound of Marcus's labored breathing. The phone call I just took, I continued, was approving the acquisition of an entire hospital system. When it's complete, our network will serve over 800,000 patients annually. 800,000 patients? Sarah whispered. We believe healthcare should be accessible to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. Our profitable services subsidize care for uninsured and underinsured patients. Gregory was still scrolling through his phone. It says here that Mercy Health Systems is considering going public. IPO valued at $3.2 billion. We're exploring various options for expansion capital. An IPO is one possibility. Marcus looked up from the phone, his face pale. Katie, what's your personal net worth? Marcus, I don't think. Please. I need to understand what I've been missing. I sighed. My equity stake in Mercy Health Systems is worth approximately $950 million. I also maintain liquid assets for operational flexibility and community investment. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Almost $1 billion, Marcus said quietly. Money isn't the primary motivation, Marcus. We've created jobs for over 12,000 people and provided healthcare to communities that were previously underserved. Diana shook her head in amazement. Katie, you've accomplished more than any of us could have imagined. I solved problems. Healthcare access, operational efficiency, quality care delivery. The financial success was a result of creating value for patients and communities. Marcus looked genuinely stricken. Katie, I've been condescending to you about your career for years. Making jokes about medical assistants and support staff, while you were building something I never could have conceived of. You weren't wrong about the importance of entrepreneurship, Marcus. You just assumed I hadn't figured that out. But why didn't you correct me? Why let me think you were just an administrative employee? I stood up from the table. Because there's dignity in all healthcare work, whether you're a medical assistant, a nurse, a doctor, or a CEO. The patient who needs care doesn't ask about my net worth. They need someone who understands how to deliver quality healthcare efficiently. But you could have told us about the business side. When you were explaining that I wasn't cut out for real responsibility. When you were using me as an example of someone who was comfortable in supporting roles. When you were lecturing about the difference between leaders and followers. Sarah looked ashamed. Katie, we owe you such an enormous apology. You don't need to apologize for assuming that healthcare administration was important work. You need to apologize for assuming it wasn't. Margaret's voice came from Sarah's hallway. Ms. Morrison? I hope I'm not interrupting, but the St. Catherine's legal team wants to finalize documentation tonight rather than waiting until tomorrow morning. Everyone turned to see a professional woman in a business suit standing in the doorway. Margaret, I said, how did you get in? Your sister let me in. She said you were in an important family meeting, but this acquisition has a midnight deadline. Marcus stared at Margaret as if she were an apparition. Who is this? Margaret Willis, board secretary for Mercy Health Systems. She introduced herself professionally. I need Ms. Morrison's signature on the final acquisition documents. Ms. Morrison? Diana repeated. Margaret looked confused. Yes, our CEO. Catherine Morrison. I walked over to Margaret. What do you need me to sign? Purchase agreement, financing documents, and board resolutions. The legal team is standing by for your approval. I quickly reviewed and signed the documents while my family watched in stunned silence. Margaret, I said as I handed back the papers, please tell the St. Catherine's staff that I'll personally address their concerns about the transition at Monday's meeting. Of course, Ms. Morrison. Congratulations on the acquisition. As Margaret left, I turned back to find 8 pairs of eyes staring at me. Katie, Gregory said slowly, you just signed documents to purchase a hospital. Yes. For $220 million. Yes. Marcus slumped in his chair. I don't understand how this is possible. How could we not know? Because you were so invested in your own assumptions that you never asked what I actually do for work. Sarah stood up and hugged me tightly. Katie, I'm so proud of you. And so sorry we never understood. I'm proud of the work, Sarah. Not the recognition or the money, but the actual work. We've improved healthcare outcomes for hundreds of thousands of people. Can you forgive us? Marcus asked quietly. For the assumptions, for the condescension, for completely underestimating who you are? There's nothing to forgive, Marcus. Just, maybe next time ask someone about their work before you decide what it means. Gregory raised his wine glass. To Katie Morrison, who quietly built a healthcare empire while we weren't paying attention. As the family toasted, I thought about Monday's board meeting, the integration challenges ahead, and the patients who would benefit from our expanded network. Just another day at the office.